I didn't even like getting up and going to work anymore, and I owned a company. So it was like, I can change the whole game.
The way people were treated, I think, was another thing that helped with building the credibility to strengthen the culture.
This has to be, first and foremost, we have to demonstrate we care about our players. Hey team, welcome back to another episode of It's All About the Team. And this is an exciting one for me. I always say that this is an exciting one, but this one is an exciting one because it's about a topic I have little or no knowledge of, but I have admired how in the industrial manufacturing setting, a team can be built, and it brought together, you know, the thoughts of coaching a football team, and now all of a sudden it's a factory team and an industrial team, whatever. And so we're so excited to have with us today from Humtown Products, Mr. Mark Lamoncha and Tim Figley. And we're excited that you'll spend a little bit of time with us.
Very excited to be here, Jim. Appreciate the opportunity. We're our hometown family, our hometown team is like family to us, and very excited, you know, with the manufacturing 4.0 that's coming along to be able to bring that team with it. And in our industry, we actually are serving the casting industry with metal castings. This particular is for a valve on a brake on a train. And we got integrated about 6 years ago. A lot of these are very complex. We had Commercial Intertech, which you know, was in the valley, and this had to be made with 9 different tools, and then 9 different pieces had to be assembled. This is all born assembled, you know, through the process of using the 3D sand printer that started with integrating educational integration with our industry with YSU. And it's a game changer for safety, and we all know that railroad safety is very important. So when the metal is poured around it, these are disintegrated and it leaves this casting, only it's much safer.
So your discussion of manufacturing 4.0 brings me to the fact of where we're sitting. We're sitting in the Excellence Training Center at Youngstown State University. Probably our faculty started dreaming about this back in about 2014, 2015, and with a lot of help from the state of Ohio, the Appalachian Region Commission, the federal government, our local business and industry. We're right here trying to make a difference in that manufacturing 4.0, and whether it be in the 3D printing realm or the robotics, a lot of the IT areas, getting youngsters in. We're sitting here today in the summertime, and there's youth camps out there experiencing what manufacturing 4.0, and Jackie Ruller and Wim Steeland from our engineering dean are just trying to make a difference. But before we get too deep into that, which you'll lose me fast, I was good, Tim, through about a couple of things, and then when he got to the point it'll disintegrate, I'm like, whoa, this is like whatever. But let's talk about your team at home, because one of the things with our guests, it's been just fun to learn what their background, what kind of helped them begin going where they ended up. And so talk a little bit about the Team Lamoncha.
Team Lamoncha was interesting because, you know, my father started as a pattern maker, and as I grew up, he had his own business. And you know, shouldn't always expect that your children are going to be gifted at what you can do, but at 12 years old, you know, he started, you know, working in the family business, and, you know, would get to work with family, and really good thing. But my spatial perception was limited on reading drawings, and we didn't have CAD back then. If we did, it would have helped me accelerate. So I really had very little to no interest in that. My interest was, you know, more in machines and equipment. You know, my brother Chris was a pattern maker. I had a sister Karen, and I had another sister Marianne. And then along came Sherry. I met Sherry in high school. My wonderful wife went to Grove City, and she got a degree in education, and then she did 1 year of that, and then she decided she didn't like homework at night as a teacher, so she decided to actually be involved in all aspects of the administrative part of the manufacturing. Then along came Brandon, my son. He was gifted in CNC and grew that to a great level in the company. And then there was Brenton, who studied industrial engineering here at YSU, and we did factory automation at the highest level in 2010. Just a brilliant opportunity. When they have the opportunity to learn at 12, with that early neuroplasticity, and be able to be into university, the professors there's such an acceleration when you combine vocational and academic, and then we had Bronson that studied mechanical engineering, and he's the one that really found that we should be in what I call next, and next was actually 3D plastic printing, but it was there was such a I call it red ocean at that time, that he saw that we should be in sand, and then he's the one that got us. We got connected to YSU, YBI, and the whole network of the family here, and that led us to, we compete on the football fields, but we need to complete between classrooms and universities, and I started to learn the culture of what you were creating between different universities to know when to compete and when to complete. And Brandon went out there for 2 years with Dr. Jerry Thiel to learn that.
Northern Iowa,
yeah. But still integrated with YSU and Dr. Brett Connor. And we were just accepted with welcome arms. We had so many projects because of the money that you talked about with the state. It was probably one of the leading university integrations, because the C-130s had tooling that was lost, and we were able, through Brett Connor and Brandon, to be able to recreate that part. And we all know what that's done for our valley, including the new CJ-130s.
Right.
And I believe there's so many more parts. And we're sitting here in this Excellence Training Center on top of, a very brilliant team that has put together one of the most advanced micro foundries with all the advanced manufacturing, that we can make those parts and help with, non-mission critical parts, that we can bring that experience together for all these students and the interns and the professors. It's just been an amazing opportunity for our family to be able to take manufacturing and not be limited by not being involved in next technology.
What amazed me as I was here as the president, watching all that going on, and I was thinking about the team that was put together between Humtown Products and Youngstown State, the Youngstown Business Incubator, which at the time was the #1 ranked incubator in the world.
Yeah.
And we're always in the top 10.
Yeah.
Oak Ridge National Labs worked with us. All the different people that got together because they had that interest in doing the next things. And I'm going to read something, Tim, before I get to you and Team Figley. All that teamwork, we often say that if we all get together, there's plenty of niceties to go around for everyone.
Yeah.
And since we have Mark Lamoncha and Humtown Products in here today, I'm going to read the nice things that came your way. So in 2024, Humtown won the Manufacturing Leadership Award. In 2019, the Entrepreneur of the Year. You were selected to be a member of the Executive Order of the Ohio Commodores because of the way you were integrating, building that team approach with education, youth, doing things that are university level. All of a sudden, the state school board thought, this is something we need to do. So you became a member of the state school board. And so it's amazing when you get to working together. And that's one thing that you've all got to think through. Who are the other teams that you can work with? Because what that has done for our region and what that has done to highlight your good work, it's just an example of it's all about the team.
Is that really the power of we over the power of me?
Power of we.
And I wouldn't leave out the fact that in 2020, that all those entities of the Valley, and especially YSU, that won the National Association Manufacturer of the Year award, four awards, and the leader of engineering over all the companies in the United States, because of the power of we over the power of me. So.
Well, I know the Figley family has done great things working together, and Tim Figley and Mark Lamoncha have written a book, which we're going to talk a little bit about as we go, The Industrial Athlete Operating System. This is something, I promise you, if you're in manufacturing and industrial of any kind, you're going to want to get this book, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but Tim has worked with Mark on that. But tell us a little bit about Team Figley prior to this book.
Sure. Before that, my dad was running a car dealership, so he had me working at about age of 13, starting to wash cars, worked in the parts department, learned how to sell cars by the time I was my first year in college. And so he really got me involved in that. But at the same time, I was also here with Joey Cassis, holding the cords on the sideline, running up and down the sidelines on Saturdays for the football games. He took me to some Super Bowls and different things to really create exposure at those ages, to allow me to eventually want to parallel what would be a great analogy with sports and how we are so successful and how winning drives attraction and excitement, and how it can parallel with what we're doing in the business world, and how those two can meet really well. Also, my mom took on, after we grew up, a pastorate role at her little hometown. And so I got to watch her serve the community and really develop team there. And so that really gave me the heart. In fact, I named my company Teams Work, because I saw teams work. I saw that the concept of culture eats strategy for breakfast that Peter Drucker said, how true that is when so many strategies don't work because there's not teams. So that coupled with that, I mean, that's some of the things that my family brought to me that enabled me to get where we're at now with Mark to write this book and to make this impact.
Well, what was so exciting to me as I watched what you guys were doing was, certainly I'd been around athletics my whole life and in education, and knew about the importance of team, and it was something we worked on every day. I thought, I've never heard this conversation in the industrial, not that I had spent a lot of time in the industrial world. And so to me, when we started this podcast and we were thinking about our goal and our mission of adding value to all kinds of teams, individuals who are a part of every team you could think of, whether it was an athletic team or it was an educational team, a nonprofit, a business, anything. The first group I thought of was how unique what you have been doing, and I also thought it's the thing I know the least about. I remember my high school guidance counselor, he was asking me what I wanted to do later in life. I said, gosh, I don't know, I'm just a kid, and all that. And he says, well, you have good math scores. He said, you might want to be an engineer. And I said, well, I don't really like trains, that well. So I didn't know.
Pretty good.
I don't know the first thing about engineering, but help our listeners and viewers know what was the genesis of the system you created, and then what went into this passion of yours to put this out so other people could benefit from what you learned about creating that industrial athlete concept.
So mindset cannot easily mind shift to new mindsets. In 2008, when the Great Recession hit our country, and GM and Chrysler and them were going bankrupt, we went from 220 people to only 3 in production. I was searching for divine intervention to be able to pull ourselves out of that, and that came to me. But it came to me with a price of learning that, traditionally, if you have, a system like in the 1920s, of employees and bosses and supervisors and managers, that it might be that as we talk about all the different generations, that it was, I was concerned, that we could lose our home and lose our business, and I was reminded divinely that I had a couple hundred people that were going to lose their jobs. And it changed that set mind to a mind shift to a new mindset of the fact that these aren't employees. You know, it's like when I walk in the door, yeah, we worked for Cummins and Caterpillar and all these other companies, but I wasn't working for I wasn't serving the right person. And that gave me the inspiration to say how many different ways the business could be gone anyway because of the times that we were in. I didn't even like getting up and going to work anymore, and I owned the company. So it was like, I can change the whole game.
Right.
So I said, we look for, you're supposed to look for safety, quality, and performance. So I decided to change it to a 6-hour period. At the time, my sons were doing ice hockey, and I would get to the game at the last minute, working on, trying to figure out, through accounting and whatever I was going to use to turn the company around. And I started looking and I go, wow, they're not getting paid, they're not working, they're performing. And just like we all have different things that we're good at, and you're good at sport, I started to see that, if you have the Super Bowl and you followed all those people home with the passion that some of them even paint themselves, if you followed all 50,000 of them home, would they be that passionate at work? And that's when I realized that I don't want a workplace anymore. I want a place of performance. And that's when it came to me, the fact that people that have a job don't like to get up, can't wait to go home, can't wait to retire. I said, interest, purpose, passion, engagement. I said, how can we accomplish all that? So somebody prior to Tim had came in, I said, I know we need to work on the culture, mine first, I need to be a coach, and I don't want to be a coach that coaches to win. I want to be a coach that coaches the DNA, the winner inside of the person. And I had no idea what I was working on. So as I met people like you, met people like Tim, I started to realize that we need to translate that over and we have insurance industry, we have the medical industry, we have manufacturing industry. Is like I said, if my sons can perform like that and they're not getting paid, then how do we switch everybody else over to be high performers? And I said, we've got to get rid of this pay rate jail. We've got to take algorithmically and with all the technology we have, and you read in the book about visual earnings, is people weren't ever created to be enslaved or exploited, but to be empowered. And you empower them through coaching and technology. And that's where a lot of that was born.
And the pride in doing their job well, but being compensated for it and knowing what they're being compensated, which was amazing. That I wasn't sure when to ask the question about that visual earnings system that you have, but I'm going to hold that question and we'll get to it.
Yep.
But so Tim, when did you enter the picture, and how did you learn about what he was doing, or did you watch it happen?
So yeah, I was first, right around 2013, went to his office, saw what he was doing, right at the time I was in your class.
Okay.
So I saw there was this idea of the industrial athlete, but then as we talked more, he asked me to come in and let's find out what we're doing differently, or how we can enhance this. And what he and I discovered by interviewing a lot of the coaches, by interviewing a lot of the team members, was let's find out what some of the differences are. And we come up with 4 things. The 4 shifts we call in the book, the 4 differences are, number 1, going from a workplace to a performance center, just as he talked about, like he saw in the hockey games. Number 2 was going from that employee to industrial athlete. Number 3 was going from boss to coach. And number 4 was going from a tug-of-war culture to a win-win culture. And those were the 4 things that, kind of putting them together, all of a sudden created the synergy that created a greater level of engagement, productivity, and so that's what we kind of learned and started to put together in the book for others to be able to learn that as well.
So it sounds to me like the first three were how we named each other, but the 4th one was that decision that we were going to work together.
Absolutely.
And that's the one. It was probably a lot quicker and a lot easier to rename things.
Right.
but how do you really make sure that we are treating one another like coaches and players and not bosses and so forth. And so as you think about, what year was that you started?
This all started in 2010, and then you came along in about 2014.
Yeah, 2013, and then got really engaged in 2020.
So if the viewers and listeners were wondering, okay, here's the team I'm a part of, whether it's a company or an athletic team or whatever, help walk them through what some of those steps were, because it was sometimes in our society we're looking for magic, and it wasn't magic. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of well, we've got to name things, we've got to act differently, we've got to not tug of war, etc. Talk the viewers through some of the steps and the things that you learned along the way to get to the point you are now.
Well, the conversions. Today we have, like you talked about names. We either are creating value in other people or taking, value away. So you have to dimensionalize that word. You can't just make it a label. There are a lot of labels that people let stick on them. The word employee denotes maybe ownership. I don't own them. I'm just blessed that they're with me. And the one thing that we found that we had to do is we had to stop just hiring people, and we, with Shodell, Skull, and Bestick, they introduced me to Profiles International, which actually looks at the thinking style, the interest and behavior, not of the person, but of the position. And I actually hired this person. It was an industrial engineer that sold this system into our company for about 3 years to do the conversion. So we analyzed every one of the positions on our team, and then we started scouting and recruiting. And then you do the thinking style, interest, and behavior of the person. And then just like at the eye doctor, when you get it all lined up, it's 20/20. That took us from like 70% down to 5%. The thing is,
70%
down to about a 5% turnover.
Okay.
And the reason for that, I call it career engineering. The bottom line is, even in a pilot, the pilot may have they'll have the thinking style and the interest, but the behavior of a fighter jet pilot and a C-130 pilot are entirely different. And if you put them in the wrong seat, the one's going to be bored. They're going to be bored really bad in a C-130, and the C-130 pilot interest would cause maybe him not to successfully complete the mission. So that was the first critical step. Put them back to about 6 hours so that you're not wearing them out, and get the lighting right and get the environment right, and make it so that if you don't have the right environment, like in a greenhouse, you don't grow plants. So if you don't have the right environment for that industrial athlete, they can't perform. So then when you get that all right, then you have quality, safety, quality, and performance. And those all started to line up. But the most important thing wasn't you could go through our plant maybe with some of the people and they'd say, well, I don't really, how I see them as the team, as the head coach, is how I treat them. And over a period of time, they'll adapt to, being that industrial athlete. Because it happens at a different timing for each one. Sure. But the whole point of that is they found a career and not just a job. So once they have that interest, that purpose, that passion, they have engagement. Tim and I did there was a study done by McKinsey, in 20 million people, 200 countries, 70 languages, that only 3 out of 10 people are actively engaged in what they do. And that affects the way, and then people wonder why. It's an alignment issue. Tim, add?
Yeah, so I can say 3 things. Number 1 was the trust building process. And this is what the different coaches and team members told me. At first, as Mark was converting over to the visual earning system, they had to trust that as they increased their productivity, they would continue to get paid what they thought they were going to get paid.
Right.
So that was a brand new system. They had to trust that process would work. And that trust grew over a period of time. Another thing was the team times. A couple times a month having team times, getting everybody together in building the values of a company, building, getting to learn each other better, knowing each other's personality style, how to best approach people, how to communicate better. So you're building some soft skills, you're building some values, you're building the internal stuff that's going to allow better communication. Another thing that I kept hearing from Sherry or from other people was Mark's personal transformation. Because a lot of times the team will take on the personality of the leader. Mark's personal transformation was to be more careful about what he said, not get angry or apologize if he did. Do some things where they said, wow, we actually see this changing. And now, right down the line, people are starting to follow in suit and changing and starting to confront different things in a different way or take more of a humble approach at something. So the way people were treated, I think, was another thing that helped with building the credibility to strengthen the culture.
One thing I found as I'm listening to you, not unlike how we tried to build a team, we wanted to kind of reset and say, hey, this has to be, first and foremost, we have to demonstrate we care about our players, your industrial athletes. I remember we had big picture on the wall of Albert Einstein saying, concern for man and his fate must form the chief interest of all technical endeavors. Never forget this in the midst of your diagrams and equations. Well, that really relates to you guys. And so as we were, trying to create that atmosphere, then as you talked about the industrial athletes or the players, whichever, same thing, employees, to one of your things, you might not call them either, but they're going to be looking at you and asking the question in their minds, does he really care? Or does he just say, that it's going to be that, right? Absolutely. And they're going to read everything you do, and and at every turn, it's going to be, and so as you think about, you started this journey in 2010, you came in and you had the chance to kind of come in at a good time and ask the questions, how's this journey going? Yeah. Okay? And so now you're, 10 years into this, 12, 14 years into this, what would you say the evolution in the last 5 years, let's say you got it under, you got it going, don't have much turnover now, okay, which is a good thing. So sustainability of excellence, we always talk about that the test of greatness and the hallmark of excellence is consistency. Can you keep doing it? What's been the key, and how's that sustainability and consistency of the approach going?
Empowering, the we call production coaches that run our facilities is the key, and you can do that with about 6, maybe up to 10 people. And one of them that came from a large company, in a I think it was, in a slight downturn that they were let go, and they came and they stayed, and they journaled to see that I was going to be consistent, because there are incentive plans all over the United States, but typically what happens is as soon as people improve their rate, then they change the rate. They do an industrial engineering study and say, well, if you can get 12, then you can get 14. And then the company keeps the money on the table. Well, I'm the gatekeeper of that system. And the rate will not change unless the customer asks for a new quote. And they were watching that. They were watching that for that consistency. And so as he stayed, Brian stayed, and he became a production coach of the facility. He's continuously, including on jobs where they think that they've reached the limit, he'll take that job over and show them, not for the personal, just to increase their internal competitiveness, not to think they've hit the law of the lid, and show them how much further they could actually go. And I think that, back to your point of consistency, is that once a company is awarded a contract, the labor portion in there, you can allow them to use their skills, ability, and their performance to run that at whatever rate they can, as long as it's right, safe, right, and obviously performance is the goal then. And that's the magic in getting rid of the handcuffs of a pay rate and just releasing that to them. And then integrating with the universities and case studies and saying, how far can we go with this? Because with this system, with all the people that are trying to find people and have long lists of people that are waiting to come in to work for their facility, we haven't had any, because of the increased performance by person and technology, that employment hasn't been an issue for us. And if there's a secret in the United States to make that change, it has to start with the owner of the company to say, you can release that labor portion and allow them to not be paid, but to earn. Earning something creates great value.
Right. Hey teammates, I want to tell you about a project we're working on with Youngstown State University. One of the ways Ellen and I have decided to give back is through the Tressel Institute for Leadership and Teamwork. We've collected a set of successful business and nonprofit leaders to serve as guest servant leaders in partnership with the Sokolov Honors College to teach university students teamwork, leadership, and personal skills. We teach from a foundation built on gratitude, excellence, hope, love, and selflessness. If you're a young person or parent helping to search for a unique college experience, you can learn more at tresselinstitute.ysu.edu or ysu.edu. Links will be provided in the show notes. So let's get specifically into the visual earning system, because to me that was intriguing. And if I had a company, I would be thinking, well, how could my company replicate that might not be exactly like yours? So explain, whichever of you wants to, explain the visual earning system as it relates at Humtown, and then segue into maybe an example of here's how you think it could fit something that's a little different than your company.
It might be interesting, Tim, if you explained it, and I'll back you up.
Sure.
You have outside perspective.
Yeah. So I think that the visual earnings is something where they can see on a scoreboard in real time what they're earning. Right. And they have the ability, each team member has the ability to adjust. So there might be some jobs where 6 people are working on one job. But they all can see, whether it's on their mobile device or right in front of them on a scoreboard, how that job is producing. And so just like the athletic analogy of you're in a game, it's halftime. You might be halftime in the week and you only earned this much through the first half of the week, and you want to adjust that to raise that 10 points, you can do that.
So do the 6 people that are working together, are they raising the level or losing the level all the same, or are they individually?
So on some jobs it could be all the same.
Okay.
They could be all collaborating, working together. How can we do this quicker?
Right.
The operator has to get to the finisher, so they're all working together, having conversations, know how to rig the job, keep changing the job, speed the job up, that sort of thing. Converting that into, for other companies, whether they're a nonprofit, whether they're a for-profit, or other industries, we've done that in the book to make it easy. And to start with, we use this acronym called GAME, G-A-M-E. And it just is real simple. First of all, identify your goals. And we want to identify them goals metrically, so from X to Y by when. So we want to know where are you at now, baseline, where you want to be, and by when. So if it's 1 year out, then what are the A is, what do you want to do to get there? Those are your activities, your actions to get there. Okay. The third one is M. How are we going to measure that? So, it's really easy once you know that goal, how to create a measuring chart, a scoreboard. I mean, you could do it in something as simple as a Google Sheet or an Excel file or something like that to get started. And so we know, okay, here's our measuring, here's how we're going to measure. And then the E is for evaluation. How often are we going to evaluate? Is that daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? For a longer term sort of project. But where you need to go, where you're going to go, and you have that scoreboard. And what I think the scoreboard does is it brings everybody together to know where we're at and what we need to do. So it actually contributes to decisions. It contributes to the actions we need to take and that type of thing. So we really do want to be able to take this from the meticulous visual earning system to convert it into other industries and what other people can do.
One of the things I thought that we always had an advantage in sport was we had a scoreboard.
Right.
But it didn't measure everything we were trying to accomplish. It measured whether or not we won the games, but it really didn't measure some of the humanistic things that we were. And so we weren't always just totally tied to the scoreboard. Well, one thing I thought was interesting when I became a college president, I thought, you know, there's not really an obvious scoreboard. It's hard, you know, sometimes you can have a big win and you can get a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of political capital, a lot of, I don't know, security, you know, whatever you want to call it. But I looked at it as college president. I thought, well, you know, everyone wants to talk about enrollment, or we could maybe do a scoreboard on how much money you raised and maybe how much research was emanated from your faculty. But there seemed like there was a lot of scoreboards versus the one that was pretty simple in coaching. So I thought, boy, coaching's a lot easier than this president stuff. So I guess my question is, can you find a way, and maybe you mentioned it in your book, can you come up with a way for every kind of company, every kind of team, to have the measurables that are easy to measure? But I think there are some things that are hard to measure.
There's some that are harder than others. I believe that, you know, university science with all the different departments could help, you know, in acclimating this. And I'll explain it very easily. Our machines in Columbiana on analog tooling-based cores are you know, based on a machine cycle. And it's like you can cycle 5 or 6 times a minute. But these sand presses, they run for 18 hours. So until they start, so we are actively working with Dave Arthurs, our programmer that was part of Turning Technologies, is currently working by the end of the year for us. We have to convert this, maybe use HoloLenses when it comes out, that it compares the file we print to the part they're pulling out. So yeah, there is it's not a problem, it's a challenge in how you actually convert it. But, you know, I love gamification. It took 5 years for the U.S. Patent Office to get this patented. And then we successfully or serially had to go after gamification. And why not? I mean, a lot of people love to play video games and a lot of people like to compete. So when they log in our factory in Columbiana, each group logs in, and the one that is achieving the highest earning rate is on top. And then there are visuals out to the side of it. You know, maybe, I don't know how many different departments at YSU would take to convert that into a full 6-hour video game. And then before long, we start doing it between 2 or 3 other businesses. And we actually now have industrial competitions and a professional level of the industrial athletes, you know, that a lot of visions are converted into reality by the integration of all the different sciences that are out there, you know, behavioral or engineering or whatever that might be. I just know that, you know, when I watched The Matrix, you know, when they actually connected into that real-time data, that was where I saw that instead of reviewing latent data, you want to change that real time. Because until you get that report and that non-profitable job is gone, you deal with it so much differently when it's inside of that right now real-time reality.
So let's take a large company, like I'm building a car.
Yeah.
Okay? And so there's a lot of different things, and they're probably measured differently. A little bit like a football team where, you know, some people handle the ball and some people block and some people are in charge of that gap, and they might not make any tackles, but as long as no one can run through that gap, maybe the linebackers will make the tackles or whatever. So fantasize with me about a large company that does a lot of different tasks of how you could marry in the visual earnings system.
What about Tesla?
They don't have that many parts, do they?
Oh, there's so many parts.
Oh, are there? Okay.
We did an emergency resource project with them, flew some of our operators out there to see how we could help with the challenge for them. And I walked through there, and all through the plant were how many cars they had built that day. You know, and it's one of my dreams would be is that I could connect with Elon and say, look, what can happen if we put this out? How many more cars could we put out? When you take all those interdependent operations,
Right.
and yes, it might be difficult, but if you see it as a problem, you'll never get it.
Right.
But if you see it as a challenge,
Right.
we can break through. So they have thousands of parts that go into those cars. So I think
thought
that
one
could
of
be
the
very
advantages
interesting.
of the EV was always that they only had, batteries and a few less parts versus the combustion engines that had thousands more. But let me ask you this question. So the first run at giving some guidance toward that challenge you're talking about, like, hey, how can we make more Teslas, or how can we, do something more efficiently and more safely and so forth. The first run at giving some consideration for how you might do it is this book,
Right.
which
and finding out the goal.
Yeah.
What is your goal in your company? And then start from there. I did it first weekly, then daily, then hourly, and then every second.
Well, I'm not trying to sell books here on this podcast, folks. I was intrigued, having tried to build teams for 48 years in higher ed, and then reading about how they're trying to build teams in the industrial setting. Walk us through the sections of this book, just to kind of give a little taste to the viewers of here's the kinds of things we're confronting, because I know all of our people that are building teams always have those, well, what about this? Well, we're a little different in this, what about this? So talk us through the general outline.
Real quick before Tim starts,
Okay.
I'd like to say that the two names on the bottom of this book, Tim and Mark, when you go into this book, the difference in this book isn't us. It's this page, commitment to unleashing their potential. When you read through here, this is for them to become the best version of themselves. This book is just a series of ideas that Tim is going to help explain that might help you be the best version of your company.
So it's kind of like my winner's manual was for our teams,
Absolutely.
huh?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
For sure.
go for it, Tim.
Well, so a couple of other things. One is when we were talking a moment ago about the teams and sustainability, and I think going and looking at a team of teams was one of the other approaches to use, and that was being able to say, okay, you have maybe a staff of coaches, but then they all have teams that they're working with, and working with small teams to build that cohesiveness. Another element of the scoreboard, I think, that where you're measuring things that are hard to measure, or you can measure things like, let's say, how are we doing on our team values? We might have 5 values, 6 values, and having everybody score that red, yellow, blue, it's subjective.
Yep.
But we're learning where we're seeing it differently, and then we're able to fill in the gaps.
And we want to know what you're thinking.
Exactly.
We've talked about that with almost every guest. Is
Exactly.
one of the things in building a team is you got to know what the team members are thinking, right?
Yep, for sure. So you can take a scoreboard and make it. You can even use subjective ideas to make it to find out that scoreboard, even to define or to find out what are they thinking. Well, why did you score yellow but you scored red on this particular item?
Right.
And now we have that conversation and we find out how do we merge that together so we're having a similar line of thought.
Might be interesting too on that line that when he went in and did the initial survey, the highest item that they asked for to improve was communications.
Not a shock. Every time we did a survey with our players, and I would ask them, what can the head coach do better? What can the staff, your position coach do better? Clearly, 10 factorial, over 25 years, it was communication. And now that is not to say my staff didn't try to communicate, but trying to communicate and connecting, and what's the number one part of communication? Listening.
Understanding. Listening, understand.
And so I think what our employees and maybe what our players were saying without saying was, we don't think the coaches are doing as good a job communicating. They're saying, I don't think the coaches are doing as good a job listening.
seek first to understand.
Right.
I was always amazed at when you told the story of the 2002 team, how you heard them in spring ball talking about we want to win a national championship, and you let that drive, the process. You let that ambition drive it to say, well, if you want to win, here's how we can do it. But you really let it be a groundswell from within the team members. That was really impressive, and I think that's the most vital part of all of this. If we're not listening first, seeking first to understand before we're understood, I think there's going to be a disconnect. We're not going to be really attuned, and so it's going to be really hard to develop the team.
Well, and that's why I was curious about that question I had on the sustainability, because things change after every season.
Yes.
I'm sure things change after every period of someone's work life. I don't know what the seasons are broken down into, but and so you're going to hear different things from your people 10 days ago and a year from now. There's going to be different concerns. There are going to be some things they've learned about. There's going to be some ideas they have, and if we're not listening to them, how are we going to get their ideas? But anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted. Go back to
So for the book, we've created a framework. It's visual. There's a visual framework here, and if you look at the visual framework, we're kind of taking it from what we say is the ego system to the operating system. Where ego drives things to where there is that collective, there is that mutual working together.
Which really would relate well to one day I was sitting down with production coach Brian, and we were talking about the hierarchy, the ladder, or the how in a company you create that hierarchy.
Sure.
And I said,
the org chart.
Yeah, the org chart.
Right.
So totally blew me away that I started thinking about the skeleton watch, where you can see all the gear sets and all the gears that are in there. What does a watch deliver? It delivers time. But what does our company deliver? Our company delivers a product. So as we were sharing about this, I go, what's the most important gear in that watch? Now, most people would say in hierarchy or org chart, they would say the CEO. And it might have more teeth on it or be a larger gear. But the most important one is the one that's missing.
Yeah, right.
Because it's not delivering time, or it's not delivering touchdowns, or it's not delivering sand cores. So you might just show that.
And we get caught up in, and we've talked with a lot of the guests that until we know that every single other one of those gears or those people are significant,
yes,
and we're insignificant without any of them.
Thank you.
That's a hard one. And what was amazing to me when I came to the university as the president and started going around and meeting the new people, I had never been a president. I had small groups. I had 10 coaches, and and one of the first questions, well, who do you think I'll report to? It was all about org chart reporting things, as opposed to, well, you report to Youngstown State. This is where we are. Yep. We're reporting to the students. We're reporting to the product we're trying to develop, and
I knew who your customer was. I was in your golf cart one day up here, and I could see that the students were your customer.
Well, that's who we were serving, right?
Exactly.
And the community.
Yeah, correct.
Obviously.
Or that.
And, the desires of the faculty. And we're serving, once we could figure out that we're serving all the needs of all the people. But anyway, go back to it. Yeah. See, I get so excited talking about that, but to me it's marvelous that I'm not just talking about a football team or whatever, or a university. This is in an industrial situation, which is, that's the heart of our
economy.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. Yeah, so, if we look at the framework, on one side there is the ladder, the structure. The other side is a gear set, meaning we all need to be working together. We're all connected. The gears show connectivity, right? And so the first one in here is from workplace to performance center, because that was kind of that first initial idea that he had when he thought, hey, if we put this visual learning system together, we can transition to what we're doing. So it's getting that mindset that we want to engage people and we want to perform at the highest level. So that's kind of a mindset, but it's also structurally what is done with scoreboards. The second part is that going from that tug of war to a win-win. And the tug of war, of course, in the setting at Humtown was well, you're asking us to do more, but we're not getting rewarded anymore. And so therefore, every time we try to create something to get more productivity, they're trying to reverse it and go the other way to not have to do as much. Right? And so that's where the tug of war was. But when every time you win or they win, the company wins, and you're both winning, now that win-win starts to create that trust. And when we talk about that part with the culture, we also refer, and you said about, do they know we care? I mean, the culture is not going to grow until we know they care. One thing that Mark has done is, when it comes time to buy fire extinguishers for the company, it's buy one for everyone to take home and learn how to put out a fire there, or a first aid kit. Or when you come, the food, you don't have to get them out of vending machines. Everything's free. When you check out, there's no cost. To show all the time we care about the whole person, not just you in these 6 or 8 hours of the workday. But we care about the life as a whole. So all that culture piece is kind of what we touch on the second part of the book. The third part of the book is, again, that transition from employee to industrial athlete. Are they also coming to perform? Are they seeing themselves as an athlete? An athlete has to take care of their bodies. They have to think differently. They have to have a different mindset. They have to want to be there. If somebody's coming and they're working at a place where we're going to measure productivity at a high level, but they don't want to work at a high level, that might not be the place for them.
Right.
So you have to have a desire to come and perform at a high level, work together, be on a team, think like that. And that's where he transitions from that job to a career or even a calling, where we're not just coming just to work, but we're coming to really be our best.
So how do you assess that as you're hiring? Because I hear that question a lot from the people that view our podcast and say, well, you guys talk a lot about the kind of people you want on your team, and how do you find those people as you're going through your hiring?
Well, this career engineering with the Profiles International is very intriguing, because you can tweak and engineer in the background different profiles. So guess which one I asked to engineer in as part of it? Athlete. Because that's performance.
Right.
And so if you're taking somebody out of pay rate jail and you're moving into an unlimited opportunity to take their skills, abilities, and performance, now you're looking for that as one of the attributes. So, along with this patent, and Dave Arthurs actually wrote, when we're doing our scouting and recruiting, we've actually taken 2 computers and taken the whack-a-mole game, and they actually sit down with our HR coach, and the faster that they can whack the mole, it's actually an hourly rate. So if they can beat her, they actually get a gift card. So right away, this is like, why am I doing this game when I'm actually in an interview? Right. And it's to find out if they engage in performing like that.
They enjoy competing.
That's right. So we don't see that. Games are seen as maybe playing, but it's a professional level of seeing that person if they love to engage.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it.
And so as you're evaluating your team, is it pretty obvious the ones, let's say, we used to always say in recruiting, we don't hit 100%. Yeah. Right? I mean,
we don't either.
And so how as you've gotten your team together, and sometimes, it doesn't work out. What's your evaluation system? Do you do it through the visual learning system, or do you do it?
Well, that's part of it. We don't want to evaluate them. We want them to evaluate themselves. And with the real-time feedback, if they're at $30 or $40 or $50 an hour, most companies are evaluating in a percentage of rate. I want to see you at 200% of rate. Nobody gets hired. Nobody goes looking for a job for percentage of rate. So that was where I go back to my father saying, if they only knew how much a minute was worth to the company. I said, no, what they're looking at is what's in their interest and their reasoning for coming, to what people call work. I call it perform. So what's interesting is watching them self-evaluate themselves. I can never remember his name from the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, Richard Sherman. Yeah.
We use cameras to catch people doing something wrong. He used that to evaluate how he was playing. So we're even looking at AI cameras that they can use that, based on this technology, they can watch their run after the game, and or for the next one, they'll go in. We have a top 10 in this visual learning system. They love to take all 10 spots. You'll go into some of them, and there's nobody else's name on that list, because that makes it what would seem repetitive or redundant. It actually makes it exciting and engaging.
So as you've been building this concept of team and industrial athlete and industrial coach, is there any other companies? I know you sent me a story about a company out in Kansas City or somewhere that you studied a little bit, but are there any other companies that you have kind of stolen from? We stole from everybody. We watched film, we said, ooh, we like what that they're running here and so forth, but any good examples of that have helped you build?
I think you're referring to Barry Waymiller, the Barry Waymiller company. They've done a good job. They wrote a book called Everybody Matters, and it's how they built their culture. Okay. That's definitely one. We took a lot from, since I've been there, the Winner's Manual, because that was one of our class projects, was to create the Winner's Manual. So we've been talking a lot about implementing that.
But as far as taking other athletes, anybody that we evaluate, that finds interest, that comes to our site, we're looking at that aspect of not just putting somebody in a job, but helping them find their interested, engaged career. And because we can't really evaluate them without having them come in, we picked up people from locally, but probably not like with sports as far away as across the country.
Well, one of the things we talked often to our young coaches who are thinking about growing their careers and maybe wanting to go coach here or there is, it's not where you coach, it's with whom. It's not where you're an industrial coach, but it's with whom. Do they have that same belief? It's not where you're an industrial athlete, it's with whom. But the beauty of what you're doing, in my mind, is that you're giving me a chance to reach my potential.
Thank you.
With this visual learning system, and at the same time making me feel like I'm part of bigger than myself, which to me is, magic.
And I earned it. I didn't get paid it.
Right.
It's like a participation trophy is like getting paid, where, winning the award is like earning it, to be the, like now with the Olympics, to earn that top medal.
So I just saw something on the news recently about the home crisis of not having enough homes, and that they've just begun to 3D print them. And do you know anything about that? And to me, that's intriguing.
What's interesting is right next to us was Pantheon with Ryan Kelly and his, the other owners of that company. And, I walked in here and I saw that and I thought about that. And then more recently, we've been working with them and talking to them. And then we even found out that our printers over in Switzerland are being used to print cement. These are not just sand printers. On these, it says on the front of it, DPM, digital part materialization. Makes me think about Star Trek. We're learning to print with some amazing materials. Anything you can granularize can be made to lay and print on there. So, he has a wonderful culture. We love what Ryan and his team have been doing, and we're currently working with them. We think that could be the next biggest thing to come out of Youngstown, YSU, and a partnership. Because when that printer came out of Third Frontier, that's probably one of the greatest uses and win for the state of Ohio. To win the NAM Award of the Year is now it's like, what materials, not what can we print, what can't we print? And integrating with Jackie and her team here, they're so passionate about what they're doing. We've only just scratched the surface with what we're doing with cores. So we know that anyone that gets a hold of you guys and wants to talk about how you have built your culture, your industrial
athletes, your industrial coaches, and how you've built your visual learning system. You've always been great about doing that. And I'm sure any viewers, if you want to get a hold of Humtown Products, they're always there for everyone. Let's not deluge them too much. But what about education? Now, Mark, you and I have talked a lot about education. And, here we are in election season, and whenever any elected officials or potential ones, want to talk about something, I say, look, the only thing I want to talk about is education, because I don't know enough about any of the other stuff, but I would love to talk to you about education. You've served on the state school board. You've made a real impact there in Columbiana County with introducing opportunities and applications for learning. Talk a little bit about what you're doing there in Crestview.
And we were educationally integrated with by YSU and got to meet all the professors and work with the interns and the students. I couldn't help but when Silver Apple Anthony Miranda came to me with, I'd like to bring industry challenges into the classroom. And we brought teachers into our facility that had never had that vocational, that marriage of the applicational and the academic. And it was life-changing to the point that, one of them now is a STEM teacher down there. And the lives that's changed by allowing them to what they do is they wrap the 4 or 5 weeks with STEM around how can we help you with cleaning your parts or extracting your parts. And then there were 7 companies, including the project they did with Crestview and Columbiana together with packaging and making new products.
In the elementary schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What we found is that actually in 4th grade, what I see as the goal is that, and we're doing these student-led tours. Cynthia Rogers with Triad had, as we were talking, I found that at 4th grade level, they were able to learn how to make the parts on the computer and bring them into the virtual build box. And then Riker, was, taught how to run the machines, that they were able to run our factory. And we've done probably 5 or 6 of those since, including Valley STEM. It is so generationally relevant, right. and they almost want to come to work right now. And I know that Cheryl, the Director of Commerce, they come up with legislators that there's a 16-year-old manufacturing mentorship program. One of the things that happened in the early industrial age was that a lot of children were exposed to factories and weren't kept safe. So they had to put the child labor laws in place. Right. Now we see that rather than putting shop class in school, we really need to put the students in the shop. Right. And I believe that, we talked about, the many different things that a teacher have to do, now. But one of the things we really need to do is have manufacturing mentorship coaches with at least now that they can go in at 16 and have these experiential opportunities. But I think that every child by 8th grade should be exposed to every career that we have so they find out what they're interested in. Better yet, what they don't like to do, till they find out what it is. And then they're going to identify, and the universities being, especially YSU being involved in all of this, these manufacturing mentorships, then we find the subjects that they love to do, and I can guarantee their grades accelerate tremendously on interest.
And this technology doesn't scare them.
Right.
They just love, that versus someone my age. Yeah. If you sent me in there, I can't even find my password to get on my phone, type thing. But, well, I know one thing. This was probably the most unique application of It's All About the Team that we've ever had. And viewers, I know maybe some of you aren't in the industrial world, but I know you know a lot of people that are. I'd recommend, and I've read this book. Now, how about this? A coach who doesn't know the first thing about manufacturing. This was couldn't put it down, because I've always believed it's all about the team, but I could have never told you how you take that into the industrial setting. they tell you how to take it in the industrial setting, and we're so proud and so excited that you're a part of our team. And I'll give you one last pitch as to how we build a team in the industrial setting. Start with you, Tim. One last pitch.
I think it just goes back to what we said earlier. Number one, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
So that's a universal one. It's not just for industrial. Yep.
You got to seek first, understand before you're understood, because you have to know where they're at to help them succeed. Yep. You have to know what they're thinking, what they want to do, what their goals are, and then anybody, I think, in any industrial setting can help their team succeed if they do that first.
I believe that the single greatest thing that we can do is align people to their interest and stop having people, just go to work. But when I could see that there was a way to move people by aligning their interests, purpose, passion, engagement, that's when the magic begins.
Well, folks, another great example. It's all about the team. Until next time, have a great one. What was it that you thought was the key to playing against the best team in the nation?
A lot of the things we did at Youngstown State, we continue to do from a lifetime of my coaches and Ohio State.
Good enough is not enough if we want to reach our goals.
Key is sustaining success, not just being hot and cold, but being able to sustain it and be able to come back.